Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Our guest today is the Prime Minister of Sudan, Abdalla Hamdok. He joins us from Khartoum. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you.
I want to begin with the dispute between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. We've seen talks going nowhere. Ethiopia has said it will go ahead with the second phase of the filling of the dam in a few months. You just called the Prime Minister of Egypt, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for a closed-door summit within 10 days to break the deadlock. Are you hoping that this will happen very soon?
Over this year, following the American mediation and then the AU, we reached an impasse. To break this deadlock, we have written to the leadership of the two countries, Ethiopia and Egypt, with the understanding that within the principles of the Declaration of Principle, the DOP, that would allow us, if we reach an impasse on the negotiations, we could refer the matter to the leaders of the three countries. And this is precisely what we did, and we hope this summit, which we are calling for, will be able to break this deadlock and allow us to reach an agreement within the remaining time. Ethiopia announced they are going to fill unilaterally without any agreement coming next July. We don't have time left. And that is why we think the issue is extremely important, critical, and time-bound.
Have you received
call for this summit?
Have you received any response from Egypt or Ethiopia about your proposal?
Not yet. We sent it yesterday. I think we are waiting for them to respond to us within the next 10 days.
Egypt hinted at a military action. Are you afraid of a war over this dam?
No, I don't think I heard anything that Egypt has hinted for on a war or anything. We are addressing this issue within the remit of the international law. We think we can, for sure, through dialogue, resolve this issue if the will is there.
Are you willing to?
We've reached 90% of the issues, so I think we are in a position.
Are you willing to call for the United Nations Security Council to intervene if necessary?
Absolutely. In this issue, we have no limits. We will go anywhere within the legal process that is allowed for us to reach an agreement, which is within our I think we're not asking for much. This is not the only transboundary river in the world. The legal issues are very clear. There is standards and norms in addressing this type of issues.
We've seen tensions with Ethiopia over the dam, over the border area. Are you concerned of a military confrontation with Ethiopia?
Sudan has always and will always be a piece of force in the region. We have no intentions of going to war. We think there is enough resources and resolve to solve these issues within with dialogue. If you are referring to the issue of the borders, you know Sudan borders about 7 countries. This is the only border. We do not have any dispute over it. It was demarcated also on the ground as early as 1902. Successive Ethiopian governments know that very well, and we never had a dispute on this.
I want to get to the issue of Israel. Like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco, Sudan has decided to normalize relations with Israel. Sudan was taken off the U.S. terrorist list, granted debt relief. And obviously the Palestinians have deemed your decision, as well as the other countries who have followed the same course, as a stab in the back. Do you understand their reaction?
Getting off the list is a game changer for us. It allowed us to come back to the remit of the international community, being a normal country, linking to the rest of the world. And as you know so well, currently we are passing through multiple transitions, from war and conflict to peace, from dictatorship to democracy, from hardships in the economic sphere, hopefully to prosperity. But most importantly, and through this process of getting off the list, is relinking to the world, meaning that from isolation to linking to the world and being part of the civilized nations. This process is extremely important to our people, and the reference to the normalization with Israel, you know, normalization is not an event, it's a process. We're going through it, and at the end, this exercise will be determined by the will and the institutions of the Sudanese people.
A Sudanese official delegation made up of security intelligence officials is scheduled to make a visit to Israel next week. In this process that you're describing, are you considering a visit to Israel in the near future?
Well, as I started earlier, you see, our current international foreign policy is designed to uphold and promote the interest of the Sudanese people. That will be the prime mover in addressing our relationship with the rest of the world. As I said also, Sudan has been isolated for so long from the rest of the world, and coming back to the fold of normal nation, we are relinking, making peace to our neighbors, our neighborhood, to the rest of the world.
So a visit to Israel is a possibility for you?
As I said, our foreign policy is for sure defined to promote the interest of the Sudanese people.
Okay, so you don't exclude it. Omar al-Bashir, exactly 2 years ago, he was overthrown, and then a transition was set in motion. The International Criminal Court still wants him and 2 other suspects in Sudanese custody. Are you still considering sending Omar al-Bashir to the ICC?
We are engaging the ICC. We are talking to them. The prosecutor came to visit us. We have been talking to them over the last year and a half. And I think there are many options in terms of how we deal and address issues of the ICC, including the handover.
You are in favor of such a handover, Mr. Prime Minister?
We are going to decide this as a country, as institutions. It's not the choice of the Prime Minister, but our institutions collectively, our political institutions, and all of them will decide this. But I think we have to understand one thing. We would like to see the victims has to appreciate and understand and feel that justice has been served.
Right. Just quickly, in Darfur, I mean, Mr. al-Bashir was accused for war crimes, crimes against humanity in that region. We've seen a recent spike in violence. Are you concerned that violence could return there after the UN and the African Union troops have withdrawn?
Well, we regret the loss of life there, but I think the situation is now under control. We have put in place measures that will go a long way in protecting the civilians in Darfur. In fact, we started a process of putting together a 20,000 strong force composed from all the elements, including the armed groups who signed the Juba Agreement recently, and they are part of the government. So I think with all these preparations, I'm very confident that we will be able to uphold peace and protect our civilians in Darfur.
2 years ago, I mentioned that Omar al-Bashir was overthrown. Since then, there is a transition period. There is still a military ruling council. Your government, are you confident the military will respect the transition period and will not decide to take matters into their own hands?
Let me just correct this statement. We don't have a military council now. We have 2 councils, cabinet, which is the ministerial council, and a sovereignty council, which is composed of civilians and military. This is what we call the Sudanese model. It is a partnership between military and civilians, and I think it is working. We know it has some challenges and problems and difficulties, and it is in the nature of any such partnership or alliance. You don't expect it to travel in a straight line. It has its issues, but I think there is a strong resolve, determination from all sides to make it work in the interest of our people. We see so well what is happening in the region, in our region. And we are very determined to protect our people and protect Sudan moving forward. And I think it is working. And with all the challenges and problems, we are very, I think, certain that we will take this journey to its respective destination.
Last question, Mr. Prime Minister. A donor conference for Sudan is scheduled in Paris on May 17th. You've told us how important it was for your country to relink with the international community. This includes, obviously, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, donor countries. A very simple question. How much support do you expect from the international communities in terms of billions of dollars at this Paris conference?
The conference is an opportunity for us to meet with our partners addressing the debt issue. You know, Sudan has a mounting debt of over 60 billion. So we hope through Paris Club and non-Paris and through the HIPIC process, we will be able to reach very sizable debt forgiveness and all that. So our expectations about the conference is quite remarkable. We don't want to put a figure on it because we are actually going there to discuss investment, not pledges as such.
Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok, I want to thank you very much for being our guest here on the France 24 interview from Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. And I want to thank you very much for watching this edition of the interview here on France 24.